My ex-wife betrayed me with my so-called golden child, brother, and now, after climbing my way to success, the family that always pushed me aside suddenly wants my help. Don't miss this truly unique opportunity to be at the origins of the great channel by subscribing to it. I'm 29, and just 2 months ago, I finalized my divorce from my ex-wife, who's 27. Turns out, she'd been having an affair with my estranged brother, also 27, for quite some time. I only discovered the truth 4 months ago when she announced she was pregnant. At first, she swore the baby was mine, but my brother's frequent visits made me suspicious. That's when I decided to check her phone. Confronted with the evidence, she had no choice but to admit the truth: she'd been cheating on me with him for a long time. My relationship with my family was already non-existent by then. I'd cut ties when I left home at 18, tired of always being treated like the outsider, while my brother got everything handed to him. One moment stands out vividly: the day I realized just how little I meant to them. I had just received an acceptance letter to college, a huge achievement, but instead of celebrating me, my parents threw a party for my brother. Their reasoning? They didn't want him to feel left out. When I asked why my own success was ignored, they brushed me off, saying I should support my brother instead of throwing a tantrum. That was the moment I decided I was done with them. I worked my way through college, scraping by on loans and part-time jobs. I moved into a tiny apartment with a friend, never once reaching out to my parents. And they never bothered reaching out to me either. Years passed. Then, last year, out of nowhere, my brother contacted me online. He claimed our parents missed me, that they wanted to reconnect. By then, I was in a good place. I had a steady job, a comfortable life, and had recently gotten married. But despite everything, I'd never really let go of the past. A part of me still craved the family I never had, so against my better judgment, I agreed to meet them. At first, it was awkward, even painful, but they were putting in the effort, so I felt like I should too. That's how I made my first mistake: I invited them into my life. I let them visit my home. And worst of all, I introduced my brother to my wife. That was all it took. They met, they started an affair, and soon after, she got pregnant. When she first told me about the baby, I was overjoyed. I thought I was going to be a father. But then, my brother started showing up more and more. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then he started touching my wife's stomach, talking to the baby in a way that made my skin crawl. When I confronted her, she dismissed it, telling me it was nothing to worry about. I couldn't shake the feeling that my brother had a deeper connection to this baby than he was letting on. 6 months into the pregnancy, my gut told me something was off, so one night, while my wife was asleep, I went through her phone. What I found shattered me. The texts between her and my brother confirmed my worst fears. The baby wasn't mine. They had been together for a long time, and what's worse, she never intended to tell me the truth. Their plan was cruelly calculated. They would keep up the lie until after the baby was born, then she'd finally confess the affair, divorce me, and start a life with him. Meanwhile, they'd live comfortably off the child support they assumed I'd be paying. The next morning, I confronted her. At first, she tried to deny everything, but when she realized there was no way out, she finally admitted the truth. And just like that, my 2-year marriage was over. Of course, my parents took my brother's side, just as they always had. Their empty words about treating us equally meant nothing. When my ex and my brother went public with their relationship, my entire family supported them without hesitation. Nobody cared about the betrayal. Nobody cared that they had shattered my trust, lied to me for months, and torn apart my life. To them, I was just an obstacle in their happy little story. And then, as if that wasn't enough, my parents had the audacity to tell me I should be happy for them. That I should celebrate the fact that my ex-wife and brother had finally found happiness. That was the final straw. I cut them off completely, but doing so came at a cost. My family sided with my ex during the divorce, and she used their support to paint me as the villain. Her lawyer spun a story about how I was controlling and had forced her to quit her job, even though it had been her choice. My family backed up her lies, claiming they had cut ties with me long ago because of my misogynistic behavior and bad temper. In the end, the odds were stacked against me, and I lost a lot of money. She walked away with a hefty settlement in my car, but at least I got to keep the house. When the divorce was finalized, all I felt was relief. There was no waiting period where I lived, and since my ex didn't contest it, I wrapped it up as quickly as possible. I wanted nothing more than to move on. Forgetting wasn't easy, but I buried myself in work. I pushed myself harder than ever, determined to build something better, something untouchable. This chapter of my life was over, and I was ready to leave every last one of them behind. My hard work paid off. 2 weeks ago, I landed a promotion, better position, higher salary, a sleek new company car. Everything was finally falling into place, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy. To celebrate, I treated myself to a solo dinner at one of my favorite restaurants. It was a small moment of indulgence, a quiet victory. The only mistake I made? Posting about it online. Within days, my mother contacted me, asking me to visit. I was stunned. After all, we hadn't spoken since the divorce, and they had fully supported my ex and her lies. What could they possibly want now? I ignored the message at first, but then the calls started, relentless, day after day. And when I didn't answer, she showed up at my office. She refused to leave. She caused a scene with the receptionist. It was humiliating. The only way to get rid of her was to promise I'd visit in a few days. So, reluctantly, I agreed. When I finally arrived, I saw that they had upgraded their living situation. The settlement money had bought them a bigger house, enough space to accommodate the baby, born just 3 weeks ago. I could only assume my alimony payments were keeping the lights on, but at this point, the amount was so insignificant compared to my salary that I barely noticed it. My brother wasn't home. My ex was asleep. It was just my parents, waiting awkwardly in the living room. I didn't bother with small talk. I sat down and let the silence stretch. 5 minutes passed before my father finally broke down and blurted it out. My brother had lost his job. The alimony and settlement money weren't enough anymore. That's why they had reached out. They'd seen my promotion post and thought I could help them out, now that they were struggling. It was almost laughable. My retired parents, my unemployed brother, my ex who clearly had no plans to work again, none of them had any income. And yet, somehow, they thought I should step in. For a moment, I was too stunned to react. Then clarity hit me. I didn't owe them anything. I didn't even owe them a response. Without a word, I stood up and walked out. At the door, I nearly collided with my brother. He froze, surprised to see me. Behind me, my parents urged me to stay, to at least hear them out. I didn't even glance back. I just kept walking. Outside, rain poured down, soaking me in seconds. I didn't care. I was already in a foul mood, and the storm just made everything feel even heavier. And then, well, maybe this is where I became the asshole. Because my parents and brother followed me, still pleading. As I searched for my car keys, my brother made one last attempt. For the first time in his life, he actually asked me for help. No smugness, no arrogance, just desperation. It must have killed his ego to do it, which only confirmed how bad their situation really was. But I had nothing left to give them, not my patience, not my energy, and certainly not my money. I snapped. I told them to leave me the hell alone. If they were that desperate, they could beg on the streets, because a stranger was more likely to pity them than I ever would. Then, without another word, I got in my car and drove away, leaving them standing in the pouring rain. And I won't lie, it felt good. For once, I was the one walking away. I was the one leaving them behind. But now, 2 days later, the guilt is creeping in. My mother has been texting me nonstop. I could help them. It wouldn't even make a dent in my finances. But after everything they've done, it just feels like they're using me. So I made my decision. I wouldn't help them. At first, I struggled with it, but then I realized they had abandoned me my entire life. They betrayed me in the divorce without a second thought. So why should I feel guilty for doing the same to them? When my mother wouldn't stop pestering me, I sent her a final message. If she didn't stop, I'd involve my lawyers. That shut her up real quick. But of course, my brother couldn't leave it alone. A few days later, he showed up at my house. He actually had the audacity to tell me that, while he felt sorry for how I'd been treated as a kid, it wasn't really anyone's fault. He was just naturally better than me. That's why our parents favored him. That's why my ex-wife chose him. And instead of acting like a child and holding grudges, I should grow up and help them out. I laughed in his face. The absolute delusion of this guy. I told him that instead of wasting time trying to guilt-trip me, he should be out looking for a damn job. That hit a nerve. He snapped, yelling that I was just jealous. That I couldn't handle the fact that not just our parents, but even my wife, had preferred him over me. And now, I was taking revenge by refusing to give them money. I didn't even argue. I just smiled and said, "Yeah, sure." He accused me of doing everything out of a desire for revenge and claimed there wasn't much he could do about it, but it didn't bother me. He got incredibly angry and threatened to come after me, demanding the money one way or another, saying I'd regret talking to him that way. Honestly, I wasn't taking any of it seriously. He can try to intimidate me all he wants, but it's just not going to work because I know he can't actually do anything to me. I'm unfazed by it all. Fast forward to 3 days ago, my brother visited to try and convince me to help them out, but he didn't succeed. My parents had tried before, but it didn't work out for them either. This time, my ex decided to call me. I was hesitant to pick up, but figured I'd answer anyway since they'd probably show up at my door again and waste more of my time. Talking to her was unbelievable. These people's sense of entitlement and cruelty was astounding. She started off politely, saying she knew I didn't have to help them after everything they'd put me through, but she asked me to consider it and be the bigger person. She tried to tug at my heartstrings by reminding me how my parents paid for everything growing up and that she did her best to be a good wife. Yeah, sure, except my parents never cared about me and always favored my brother, and she had cheated on me with him, the same brother I had always complained about. So, that approach didn't work at all. I told her I felt bad for what was happening to them, but I was already spending a lot of unnecessary money on alimony, which she didn't even deserve because she cheated on me, but still managed to get it due to my family's lies and manipulation, making me the villain for their benefit. She started crying on the phone and accused me of being selfish and heartless, which was rich considering how I still refused to help. She then said my brother was right and that I left her no choice but to involve the law. She claimed she was going to demand a higher alimony and take me to court to humiliate me again. Honestly, I'd like to see them try. The first time, I was so emotionally drained and depressed that I didn't even fight back. I just gave in and agreed to pay the alimony without challenging their false claims. They had painted me as toxic and controlling, but that wasn't who I was. She had no reason to cheat on me and didn't deserve a cent from the divorce. Back then, I just wanted the divorce to be over, no matter the financial toll. But this time, I'm ready to fight back and teach my family a lesson they won't forget. Update 3. In a shocking twist, my wife was right. For the first time, my ex actually filed for a higher alimony amount, claiming that I'd been promoted. But this time, I wasn't going to let things slide so easily. I reached out to all our mutual friends and filled them in on everything, letting them know what had really been going on, as most of them only knew that we had separated, not the full story. They were all shocked, and I asked them to testify for me if it came to that. They agreed without hesitation. I also told my lawyer that I wanted to end the alimony arrangement completely, since she didn't deserve a dime. Over the next few days, I gathered all the evidence I could on how my parents and brother had treated me horribly, never seeing me as an equal, and now, they were coming after me for money just because they knew about my promotion. I had reached my breaking point. I was done letting these people drain me, and I wasn't going to worry about their feelings anymore. I managed to convince some of my cousins, who had witnessed how I was treated like an outsider in my own home growing up, to speak on my behalf. Despite not being particularly close, they agreed to help. My lawyer was pleased with the evidence we collected, saying it was airtight and that we could potentially stop the alimony payments. It was already well known that she had cheated on me, but the lies my ex had told about me being the villain and my brother being the hero who rescued her were all false. Even though I hadn't fought back the first time, this time, I was determined to set the record straight. My family had nothing to say when I presented video testimonials from friends and relatives supporting my side of the story, showing that everything they had claimed about me was a lie. I guess they thought they'd get away with it this time too, just like last time, but I wasn't the same emotionally fragile person anymore. All the crap they had put me through had only made me stronger. Yesterday, the court finalized that I no longer had to pay alimony, thanks to all the new evidence. I was over the moon when I realized it was finally over. Seeing the smug look wiped off my family's faces and watching my ex look like she might burst into tears brought me immense satisfaction. Honestly, I couldn't care less about her tears. I was just done with the whole situation. I figured I'd go home and treat myself to something nice to celebrate. I was just about to enjoy a nice takeout and a movie, but of course, my family had to ruin it. As I was pulling into my driveway, I noticed my brother's car parked outside, which confused me. I went inside anyway, only to find my entire family standing in front of my door, blocking my way. I was taken aback and didn't even know what to say, but I decided not to let it get to me. I told them to get off my property or I'd call the police. That's when my dad spoke up, saying I should be ashamed of myself for what I had done that day. He went on about how I had no sense of responsibility towards my family, and had betrayed them by not helping when they needed it most. After he finished, I chose not to engage. I just stood there silent. I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of getting me emotional. I figured they were trying to get me upset enough to make a rash decision, but I wasn't falling for it. My silence seemed to irritate them even more, and my mom demanded that I respect my dad and talk to him, but I refused. It was clear they were hoping for a fight, but nothing like that was going to happen. After more yelling, my brother finally lost it and grabbed me by the collar, attempting to hit me. Thankfully, my dad pulled him back just in time. My brother yelled at me, calling me a jealous loser who would never amount to anything. It was almost laughable, coming from an unemployed guy still living with our parents and begging my brother for money. I told them to leave, or I'd call the cops. Given their financial situation, I warned them that they should probably leave within the next 5 minutes. Reluctantly, they backed off, but not before my mom tried one last attempt to guilt me into giving them money. It still didn't work. Finally, they left. It's been almost a day since then, and I haven't heard from them, and I'm really hoping it stays that way.